Hello, welcome to the British Library. It's my very great pleasure to welcome you all here for the Michael Marks Awards for Poetry Pamphlets and to introduce Lady Marks, who's the founder and real kind of driver behind these awards as they grow and evolve. We're now in our 15th year, who'll be welcoming you to the event and starting us off this evening. So, very great pleasure to welcome Lady Marks.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 15th celebration of the annual Michael Marks Pamphlet Poetry Awards. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a sore throat, so I have a sweet as well in my mouth. Please forgive me if things are coming out slightly strangely. This year, it is a hybrid event, and I want to thank both those who braved the elements to be here with us tonight at the Learning Centre of the British Library, but also those who I'm told are the majority, and who are watching the awards live from their homes all over Britain and abroad. For those who are joining us for the first time, I will give a brief summary of these awards. The Michael Marks Awards for Pamphlet Poetry were founded by the Michael Marks Charitable Trust in 2009 and are given in collaboration with the British Library, the Wordsworth Trust, Harvard University, and the Times Literary Supplement. We are very grateful to these esteemed organizations for their support and for providing the judges for the Poetry and Publisher Awards. This year, we have been very fortunate to have as our judges Fiona Benson, Imogen Cassels, Laura Johnson, and Stephen Cleary. Our Pamphlet Illustration Award is given again this year by Nicholas Penny, the former director of the National Gallery. As some of you know, the foundation behind this award is the Michael Marks Charitable Trust, a foundation started by my late husband in 1966 with an endowment in order to support culture and the environment. A couple of years ago, following the COVID epidemic, which some scientists believe that it was a direct result of our environmental neglect, we decided to add to our environmental activities an Environmental Poetry Award in collaboration with the Wordsworth Trust. As I'm sure you know, Wordsworth is considered the par excellence nature-loving poet of England. The judges for the Michael Marks Environmental Award this year are the well-known BBC wildlife filmmaker and writer John Aitchison, poet, novelist and memoirist Helen Mort, and the representative of the Wordsworth Trust, Jane Craven. Another thing I wanted to stress is that the procedure for applying for our environmental award is different to our other pamphlet awards. And we don't receive an already printed pamphlet, but a portfolio of poems. The winning portfolio is then published by us on environmentally friendly paper and then sold by the British Library, the Wordsworth Trust, and online. And you will also find it, as well as all this year's shortlisted and winning pamphlets, at the foyer of the theatre, where drinks will be served afterwards. This year, I am told, we have some very strong shortlisted contenders in all categories, and I'm sure you're eager to listen to their poetry or see the shortlisted pamphlets and listen from their publishers, and finally discover who the winners are. But before I leave you to the capable hands of our administrator, Mrs. Lindsey Forster-Holland, I wanted to remember here Gboyega Odubanjo, a 2021 winner of the Michael Marks Poetry Award. He was an exceptional young man, full of talent, dreams, and energy, whose life was cut short from a terrible accident. We will always remember him, happy and smiling, when he won the Poetry Award on that award night. May his memory live forever. And now I will call on Lindsey Forster to start tonight's awards proceedings. Thank you all for coming.
So thank you, Lady Marks. Well, as you know, my name, I've only recently got married. I'm actually Lindsey Forster-Holland, and I'm the awards administrator, so I'll be guiding you through tonight's event. I'd like to add my welcomes to everyone who's here tonight, whether you're joining us from home, because there are many people, as Lady Marks said, who are joining us online, or here in the British Library. Some of you may have followed our transition from a private gala dinner to an online-only event during the worst of the pandemic to the hybrid event that we held last year. And as Lady Marks was saying, we're doing it that way again this year, so we hope you're really going to enjoy it tonight. We're delighted to have in the room with us all of the shortlisted poets, all of the publishers or people representing them. Sadly, train troubles still get in the way of some people reaching us here, but I know that you're watching. Judges of all of the prizes, the Environmental Poet of the Year, whose pamphlet will launch tonight, and even a whale expert. Yes, you heard that right, a whale expert, who's here with us fresh from COP28. So if you're watching online, you may have already seen me talking with, actually you haven't seen me talking with, because we haven't done any interviews. See, that's the word. Reading from this is not working, is it? But anyway, if you look at last year's, you'll see that I did actually do an interview with Gboyega Odubanjo, and I did want to mention, I can't help but think about that, because about this time last year I was talking with him. It's utterly tragic, and I do hope that he is being honoured by our thinking of him here tonight. Many of you will know that we have social media accounts which will be active tonight, so we'll be using mostly X, although a lot of the time now we do things on Instagram. Please do post about the event as it unfolds. Use the hashtag Michael Marks Awards. That's whether you're here or at home. We'd like to know what you're thinking, have a big discussion about it all. Do check our website too, where there's information about the awards history, the different prizes, the partners, how it all works. We're partnered with, as you know, the British Library, Wordsworth Grasmere, the TLS, and the Harvard Centre for Hellenic Studies. And of course, you can read more there about everyone who will be appearing tonight or reading poetry here tonight. It's all on the website. Some of you may be new to these awards, and maybe even to pamphlet publishing, and I'm thinking particularly about people at home. I know there are people that, friends and family, and people that are just interested in poetry but aren't part of the community. So if that's you, this is a little bit about pamphlets. They're often a doorway into poetry publishing, offering opportunities to new poets. But they're also ideal for more established poets to focus on a single project. Not too big, not too small. The result is a small book that you can read easily, often in a single sitting. It's because of this that the awards came together, partnering with the British Library and the other partners, and we aim to highlight the wonderful work that goes into writing and publishing specifically for pamphlets. Every year I say that this awards night isn't just about the winners, but I do mean it, and I have to say it again. Yes, there will be overall winners, and I wish you could know how much love and enthusiasm goes into the judging meetings. Every shortlisted poet or publisher is here because they... Can you not hear me? Thank you. Because they stood out as excellent. So do buy their pamphlets. There's a pamphlet sales table outside. And then if you're watching at home, look them up. You'll see the names of the pamphlets, look them up, order them, read them, they're brilliant. So, yes, I'm now going to explain how the evening is going to unfold. In the first section, each shortlisted publisher will speak about the work of their press and show you some aspects of it. So at home, you'll see little bits on your screen. Here in the room, you're going to see it on that screen. And then the TLS judge, Imogen Cassels, will announce this year's overall winner. We'll then move on to hear from the Illustration Award judge, Sir Nicholas Penny, and the winner, who is in this room. After that, we'll move to the Environmental Poet of the Year part of the night. Now, I'm going to say a bit more about this later, but you'll be hearing from Jane Byrne, who holds the title this year, and she'll be launching her winner's pamphlet. It's absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. You'll hear about that later. You'll also hear from Judge Helen Mort, who's here with Tom Mustill, who is the naturalist and whale specialist that I mentioned earlier. Lastly, we'll have readings from each of the 6 shortlisted poets before hearing from Judge Fiona Benson, who will announce the overall winner of the Poetry Award. I'll introduce each of them in turn, so you'll be hearing from me and seeing me pop up and down from this stage over and over. But I like to give each person the introduction that they deserve. So, we'll begin with the Publishers' Award. The Emma Press impressed the judges for the way that they're prioritising quality over quantity. The choices made by the editorial team about paper and printing, promotion, the editing of the poetry, and the support offered to the authors, these aspects all stood out. The pamphlet seemed to the judges to have been tended to closely with the greatest care. The judges also noted their commitment to beautiful illustrations and cover artwork, which struck them as complementing well the poetry. So, please welcome to the stage James Trevelyan of the Emma Press.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Trevelyan. I am the maternity cover director of the Emma Press. It's a real honour to be shortlisted alongside publishers that we have such a deep respect for the work of. The Emma Press was founded by Emma Diane Wright in 2012 and has been running from Birmingham's Jewellery Quarter since 2015. It was formed with the mission to publish beautiful books, to bring poetry to more readers, and to make publishing more open and accessible to a wider range of writers. And over 10 years on, we're really pleased to say that those missions remain a driving force behind our work, except that our output has expanded into fiction and non-fiction for adults, and fiction and poetry for children. Our very first books we published were poetry pamphlets, and we're passionate that they remain a fundamental part of what we do now and in the future. We receive nearly 400 poetry pamphlet submissions annually, and we are purposefully publishing fewer, with an emphasis on selecting and working with the highest quality, and making sure we give them as much space in our calendar as we do our full-length books, as well as the same resources in editorial and design, marketing, and events. Where pamphlets are so often emerging writers' first taste of the publishing industry, it feels crucial for us to demonstrate a commitment to them and their work, and make a positive experience to begin their careers. We published and entered 2 poetry pamphlets this year. In January, Kirsty Miller's debut, The Strange Egg, explored the author's experience of endometriosis through a prose poem where the speaker is haunted by the vision of a large egg following her. It felt in the truest sense a work that could only exist in the short pamphlet form, and the surreal and hyperreal visions of medicated dreams and painful hospital appointments lent themselves to our Art Square format and were vividly brought to life by Hannah Mumby's visceral red illustrations. And in summer, we published Accessioning, the second pamphlet by former Michael Marks Award winner Charlotte Wetton, which was a precise and measured pamphlet at equal times unsettling and laugh-out-loud funny. And we describe it as an index of lives and objects encased in museum glass, then brought to life. Both those books were launched online and in Birmingham at the brilliant Voce Books, a bookshop stocking only independent publishers, and printed at our local printers, the Holodeck, who make beautiful first editions of all our pamphlets, invariably on salvaged paper and offcuts to save on waste, and kind of brilliantly hand-deliver them in 2 little bag for life to our office. So I'd just like to finish by thanking those partners and our authors and illustrators this year, Charlotte, Kirsty and Hannah, and Rena Makwana, who created the cover for Accessioning. And I'd like to thank our small part-time team that has grown and shrunk and then grown again over the course of these books, especially those who worked on their selection, editorial and publicity, who was Emma, Christy, Kais, Pema, Georgia and Perry. And thank you again to the judges for recognising our work this year.
Thanks, James. So next I want to talk to you about Guillemot Press. Guillemot Press stood out to the judges for their commitment to quality in every way. The attention to detail is total, they said, highlighting the choice of cover papers and commitment to environmental sustainability, as well as the press's plans to develop in the coming year. The trains from Cornwall have let us down a bit, but Guillemot have sent one of their poets, Karenjit Sandhu, who will present the editors here tonight. Please welcome her to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Karenjit, and I was lucky enough to have my poetry collection published by Guillemot in 2022. It's always such a privilege to work very closely with both Luke Thompson and Sarah Cave. And as Lindsey's mentioned, due to travel disruptions, Luke and Sarah unfortunately can't be here with us tonight, but they have asked me to read the following statement on their behalf. Thank you very much for inviting us to the Michael Marks Awards 2024. It's lovely to be sharing a shortlist with such great company again. Congratulations to Emma Press, Outspoken and Mariscat, and of course all the other shortlisted and winning poets and illustrators this evening. We've had a strong year developing pamphlet publications, and it's lovely to have that acknowledged in this shortlisting. We had 3 eligible titles for the prizes, 3 very different kinds of pamphlets from 3 quite distinct and exciting poets. Jennifer Lee Tsai's La Mystérique, Nancy Campbell's Uneasy Pieces, and the sensational debut Exora by Prirana Kumar. The poetry from 2 of these won Rebecca Swift Awards at the start of the year, and they really are quite extraordinary bodies of work. We'd like to acknowledge the wonderful booklings of 2023 too. The little books don't quite meet the Michael Marks criteria, which this year included titles by Salima Hill, Susie Campbell, Astra Papachristodoulou, and David Harsant. Thank you and congratulations to all of you. We'd also like to thank the artists that we've continued to work with this year, including Chloe Bonfield, Antonia Glucksman, Anupa Gardner, and Rose Ferraby, who have strong and fabulous ideas that help make our books distinct, using a range of new and traditional processes, including experimental image-generating software, wood and lino cut, and risograph printing. Similarly, we should acknowledge our printer, Roy, at Palace Printers, where we make our books. Roy lets us play and experiment with materials many printers would not, which allows us to test out the latest in sustainability, from the ocean plastic stocks we used a couple of years ago to the new Favini stocks of this past year, made with post-agricultural waste from coffee manufacturing, which we used on Astra's little bookling about bees. Finally, looking ahead, 2024 is probably going to be our biggest year yet for little books. Our Guillemot Guide to the Pamphlet is due any day now, while in the new year, we're beginning a series of non-fiction pamphlets in collaboration with Willow Herb Review and UEA for new writers of colour, which opens with Nichelle De Silva, Amina Khan and Praha R. Beyond that, our pamphlet and bookling publishing schedule for 2024 will include Nina Mingia Powles, Maya Elsner, Becca Drake, Genevieve Carver, Nadira Wallace, Phoebe Power and Salima Hill. So we have a fun year ahead. And finally, thank you again for the shortlisting. Best of luck to everyone on the list, and we hope you have a very good evening.
Thank you. It was lovely to hear from you. So moving on to Morrison Press. Now, Morrison Press have 2 publications on the Poetry Award shortlist. So not this award, but the Poetry Award shortlist, which surely speaks to the judges' views of the quality of their poetry. It's something that the judges spoke of quite specifically because they entered 3 other pamphlets as well that aren't on the Poetry Award shortlist, but the judges felt that they were also extraordinary and wonderful. They felt that the scrupulous attention paid by this press to the smallest details, such as typefaces and the feel of each pamphlet, was really quite wonderful. So please welcome to the stage their editor, Hamish White.
Thank you, Lindsay, Lady Marks. Everyone, good evening. I'm very pleased to be shortlisted again for the Michael Marks Poetry Publishers Award. But I'm even more pleased, as Lindsay said, that we have 2 poets on the shortlist for the Poetry Award. This, we feel, is validation indeed. Thank you. I felt that this year we had a really strong list. Our usual mix of established poets, new poets, and up-and-coming poets. We sometimes call them in-between poets. And we had particularly striking covers, which you'll see out on the table, 3 of them provided by the poets themselves. As Lindsay said, the judges said some very nice things about Mariscat, especially finding impressive what they call scrupulous attention paid to finding the right typeface for each pamphlet, although they added in brackets, and a bit mad, question mark, exclamation mark. Fellow pamphleteers, are we all a bit mad? Maybe we are. Obsessive, certainly. We know that poems must have the right setting, space round them, room to breathe, and the right type to convey what they say. For example, long lines need a narrow but clear face, like Juliana in Kate Hendry's pamphlet, and a good strong clear type in Blake Morrison's pamphlet. It's called Kingfisher. And don't you find the names of type evocative, like Baskerville, Bodoni, Scotch Roman, which we're keen on because we're Scottish, as you know. We're based in Edinburgh. Dante is another good name. Anyway, I like the names of types. Mariscat began a long time ago in 1982 with a cheapo A5 pamphlet. We wanted to share our friend David Nielsen's witty and scabrous Glaswegian translations of Catullus. Yes, we borrowed an electric typewriter which had a full stop like a huge ink blot. We talked to the nice people at Prontoprint and we were away. And we even got David reading the poems on the Radio 1 roadshow. We've never reached such dizzy heights since, although this is close. But once bitten by the publishing bug, we kept going, and we have come a long way. We still have the excitement of finding the poems, meeting the poets, editing the text, and the fun of choosing the typeface, paper and format. And we now employ a designer, the wonderful Robert Dalrymple. Printing technology has changed. In the old days, some of you may remember, the scalpel, paper proofs, camera-ready copy. I sometimes miss the smell of cow gum, if you remember that. So we began with a pamphlet, and 40 years later, we're still producing them. And we have to keep the grumpy cat happy. Thank you.
So we're moving on to our last publisher on the shortlist, and that's Outspoken Press. They stood out for their consistency. all of the pamphlets they published seemed to the judges to form a coherent whole. The colours and graphic design being attractive, clean, but not clinical. Choices of paper, a thick, weighty stock, pleasant to touch, were noted. The judges also talked about the consistency of the poetry. Even the themes had a consistency to them, focusing on human relationships and interactions in particular. They felt that in the best way, you always knew what you were going to get with this press in terms of quality and the experience. Please welcome to the stage editor Anthony Anaxaguru.
Hello everyone, lovely to see you, it's lovely to be here. There it is, look at that. So this press started in 2014, like with a lot of the things that I do, I kind of get angry first and then I try and do something about it. There was what I felt to be a discrepancy at the time, where there was a lot of poets who I was kind of hanging out with that I felt couldn't be having their work seen or published because of I think some of the prejudices that maybe 10 years ago were maybe bogging poetry down. So we started Outspoken Press about a year after we started Outspoken Live as a way of trying to champion voices or platform voices that for a lot of the time had been neglected. And that was really the kind of mission. I think there's always been like a strong political stance with the things that we put out, and the work, the curation of the work, I think is also something that we think about a lot, which is interesting that Lindsey said about subject and theme, which I think, correspond to editors as well. When you're curating something over a period of 10 years, you're obviously changing as an editor as well, and you're going through different variations, and that will reflect on the work that you choose to align yourself with as an editor and as a publisher. And so I kind of felt that the pamphlet gave a really good opportunity, for a short EP to show people what someone is doing. And we've had some really interesting poets kind of come up through the ranks. And I like the fact that major poets can publish a full collection, get on a nice little prize, get a nice little book deal, and then come back and do like a 15-page pamphlet again for their, coin collection or whatever it is they're interested in. So I kind of like the pamphlet offers you that kind of versatility, which is why I think we're always going to be doing it, even though it's very difficult to convince booksellers to stock the things. That's a different debate, I reckon. But overall, we have a lot of fun with them and trying to get the graphics and the types and just trying to be, I guess, inventive and creative when it comes to how things look, which I think everyone actually does from what I've been seeing as well. So it's great to be amongst such esteemed people. Yeah, it's been a good time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we've learnt more about the publishers, I'd like to introduce Judge Imogen Cassels. She's the judge chosen by our partner, the TLS. Now, as well as writing for the TLS, Imogen's recently completed a PhD on Dylan Thomas and the experiences of reading, so she's been having an experience judging this. Her own poetry has been published widely. Her most recent pamphlet is Chesapeake, I think that's still the case. And she's particularly interested in form, translation, folk song, and free association. She'll tell you more about the judging of the awards, I think, and will announce, certainly, and then hand over to this year's overall winner, who will receive a prize of £5,000. So we'd like to hear from you, Imogen.
It's less obvious to me knowing how to judge a poetry press than it is knowing how to judge the poems they publish. I think this is because the various aspects of a pamphlet press extend beyond the contained field of language, occupying various axes, and are not all as immediately glamorous as the poetry they serve. Proficiency in typesetting, for instance, sourcing paper, ink, and binding, mailing lists, organizing events, endless postage and packaging. These make up a press as much as anything else. That's alongside an editorial eye keen enough to support each poet's work, tailoring itself to their needs, but also with a more holistic vision for the press itself, able to put together a list which speaks to the identity of the press while maintaining an open-endedness for further work. Ultimately, a press can, if it chooses to, generate and maintain a whole community of writers, readers, and other publishers, all of whom are enriched by the work, glamorous and unglamorous, of the press in question. So I'm very glad there's an award for this hard work. And for all that the production of pamphlets may be time-consuming and complicated, what we look for in the end result is all too simple, something good to hold and good to read. Judging presses, we looked for lists that were full of wonderful poets, presses with enough of an identity that you could read publications together or against one another, but not so much similarity as to become a monoculture. Presses whose physical productions had an attention to detail that could actually enhance the poetry printed there. I'm happy to say that all the shortlisted presses gave us this and so much more, with editorial statements that testify to the hard work and love that goes into their productions. But one press has to stand out for its understated stylishness, devotion to design and the intricacy of typeface, beautiful formats and generous margins, and the warm strength and flexibility of its brilliant list. And that's the Mariscat Press.
Is this better than the Radio 1 roadshow? Oh, thank you. We have won it before, but to win it twice is just amazing. So there must be a few thank yous. And the first thank you goes to this lot. All of those Lady Marks and everybody else who's organised this right from the beginning. Poetry pamphlets are now firmly on the literary map, and it's thanks to Michael Marks that they are. So thanks to everybody here. The press, thanks to my partner Diana, assistant editor and talent spotter. Thanks to our, as I mentioned earlier, wonderful designer, Robert Dalrymple, and our enthusiastic printer. The other publishers have mentioned working with printers, and it's just great when you find a printer that you can work with who understands you and appreciates what you're trying to do. So that's Philip Wilson of Love and Humphreys in Port Glasgow. Thank you to my son and daughter, Kenny and Christina, who read every single one of the pamphlets published by us. And finally, of course, thanks to our poets, without whom we wouldn't be here. 400 years ago, you could have your ears cropped for publishing pamphlets. It's great that there's still, pamphlets can still create a stir with an event like this. I'll just finish with a few words from the Glasgow's Poet Laureate, Jim Carruth, who wrote a poem called Pamphleteer, which finished, "Let your staples shine." So thank you once again for this wonderful, wonderful time.
So congratulations, Hamish and Mariscat Press. And go out and buy the pamphlets because, yeah, if you could have heard the judges' discussions, they're good. So, thank you also to Imogen. We'll now move on to the Illustration Award. This award is part of the awards because of our conviction that poetry pamphlets are often at their best beautiful objects in their own right, as well as vehicles for new poetry or for experimentation on a theme. This aspect of pamphlet publishing could and should be celebrated. If you're a publisher watching this, now I said this last year, we hope you'll be inspired to include illustrations in your publications. Many don't, but think about it. It's worth turning it into a lovely object. The award itself is for £1,000 and this year has been judged by Sir Nicholas Penny. Sir Nicholas was director of the National Gallery in London from 2008 to 2015. He was keeper of the Department of Western Art at the Ashmolean Museum and senior curator of sculpture and decorative arts at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, and that's to name just a few posts. He's authored many books and articles on both painting and sculpture. As I'm sure you can gather, he knows well how good illustration should complement a text, as well as being of high quality in its own right as art. Please welcome Sir Nicholas Penny.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. The Strange Egg, a symptoms diary, is a sequence of poems and prose poems by Courtney Miller. It is published by the Emma Press, and you've already seen flashes of it already. It is illustrated by Hannah Mumby in dark brown, red, carefully chosen red, as some of you may already have overheard, and white. So just two colours, because the white is the colour of the page. Miller, the founder of AIC, received a scholarship which I'd never heard of before, and by which I'm extremely intrigued. Ink, Sweat and Tears. And if illustrators were eligible for such, Mumby would surely get one too. Here are some lines from The Strange Egg. Oh, I hoped to do without it. No, that's not a line. Well, it's actually quite good, but it's not what I was going to read. Pain, all guttural and hot. A blue-gloved hand inside of me. I pass clots, black and as big as pennies. Nurse with large, luminous teeth. And then reported speech. There's a good girl. Now would you like to see your egg? So you get the picture. And the words are there as well. Some images in the poem are depicted. Thoughts are white mice. You can see the white mice. And the very fine line, I limp behind the fawn as if newly born. And there are also luminous teeth, although not those of the nurse. But what I would especially commend is the way the illustrations suggest the rush and flow of body fluid, seen and sensed, guttural and hot, the alarm of unexpected biological growth and surprise release. Also, the cuts of film-like dreams and those of surgery. And the fact that the egg is white and the page is white may make the egg more of a phantom. That's my hope, anyway. Congratulations to you, Hannah Mumby. I believe she's going to appear, for what you have achieved and for so enhancing the words of Courtney Miller. And congratulations to the Emma Press. Perhaps the Emma Press brought poet and illustrator together, but these are mysteries which I cannot divine. But thank the Emma Press certainly for hatching this strange and powerful pamphlet. why on earth don't more of you see the merit of illustration, I wonder? I mean, why don't you give me more problems to scratch my head over, more to read and to assess? Perhaps you think that pictures bestow an inappropriate specificity. Perhaps you'd rather provide music. Perhaps you feel that the visual art distracts. Remember that illustrations can complement and supplement, reinforce and amplify, as they so admirably do here. You all know that type matters, and you give great attention to covers. Why not let images more often matter as well, as they so admirably do in this particular case? Thank you very much, and I hope that, oh, good, you're going to come and say, may I? You get the £1,000 separately. It's not fair. Could you, in your words or outside your words, explain how it was that you came to do this? Because we often don't hear that. Over to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Well, I do know Kirsty already. I met Kirsty because I work for an arts and health charity, and I invited Kirsty to join me for a podcast to speak about different ways of approaching thinking about health and illness and the body through writing. So Kirsty and I have been co-conspirators for a little while, but I was just so delighted to be asked by Kirsty and to be trusted with such a beautiful piece of writing. And I'd really like, firstly, to thank Kirsty Miller. She's been engaging with questions about illness, health, bodies and pain in her remarkable work as a writer, and also through her intersectional magazine, Ache, which was mentioned earlier by the Emma Press. And I would like to express a really heartfelt thanks to the Emma Press for their openness, their support. They're a dream to work with. They gave me permission to push the envelope and take the illustrations to dark and interesting places. And of course, deep thanks to my partner, Guy, at home, and my best friend, Vita, who's here. They both endlessly inspire me and help me to find my voice. Thanks very much, everybody, for having me.
Thank you, Sir Nicholas and Hannah. So we're moving on to the Environmental Poet of the Year, which, as you know, is a completely different thing. It's not for a published pamphlet, it's for the poems that become a published pamphlet. And we're launching that pamphlet tonight. So if you're here with us, you can buy a copy outside now. It'll take a while to get it onto the system to buy online at Wordsworth Grasmere and certainly at the British Library. So you've got to snap it up while you can if you want it in time for Christmas. And I think you're going to want it. Anyway, you may know that the Michael Marks Charitable Trust has twin aims: to promote the arts and to promote the environment. We first launched this prize unintentionally during a heat wave in which temperatures here in England went above 40 degrees for the first time. Now we're talking on the eve of what, perhaps for the first time, looks like an actual shift in the agreements on fossil fuels at COP28. I imagine they won't go as far as they need to, but we can hope. What poets have to say about these massive issues surely matters and could make a difference. If it isn't up to poets to find the perfect words, words that can persuade, words that can navigate tricky issues like money and oil, then which wordsmith should we look to instead? It's a terrific prize. So if you're watching at home, consider how you too could work the environment, how it affects you personally right now, into a small portfolio of poems for next year's competition. The winner receives the title, pamphlet publication, £1,000, a trip to Greece, and at least one event with Wordsworth Grasmere. And Michael McGregor, who is the director of Wordsworth Grasmere, will say a little more about this part of it and the collaboration in a few minutes. We have a separate judging panel for this prize. First of all, Helen Mort was on the judging panel. She's not only, and I'm going to start introducing her because you're going to see her on this stage in a few moments. She's not only a prolific poet with many publications and awards to her name, including being shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize and winning the Fenton Aldra First Collection Prize. She's also a novelist, playwright, memoirist, and biographer, and has a particular interest in mountains and the outdoors. Joining Helen on the judging panel was Jane Caven from Wordsworth Grasmere, and also John Aitchison, who's a wildlife filmmaker and writer who's filmed for the BBC and National Geographic, among others, including work on Frozen and Planet Earth 2. I mentioned John not only because he was an absolutely fundamental part of the judging discussions this year, but because he happened also to know whale specialist Tom Mustill, who's going to join Helen here on stage in a moment. You may know Tom because he went viral some years ago when a whale flew out of the sea and landed on his kayak. Just an average experience, you'll agree. It was actually, I think I'm right in saying, a pretty profound one. And his ensuing research resulted in the book How to Speak Whale. He's a wildlife documentary filmmaker and producer with a podcast that's included guests Greta Thunberg and George Monbiot and collaborations with Sir David Attenborough. He's been reading and appearing at COP28 this week, and I think he's been talking about the Environmental Poet of the Year pamphlet, and we're absolutely delighted that he's here to say a few words about that before he and Helen together are going to hand over to Jane Byrne, our Environmental Poet of the Year. I have to say, I'm not introducing Jane, but I've been working with her on this pamphlet, and it's been an absolute joy. It's a fantastic pamphlet, so get your mitts on it. Please come to the stage, Helen and Tom.
Good evening, everyone. This looks like we're going to do some kind of Chuckle Brothers style to me, to you, double act, doesn't it? But,
let's go for it.
Okay. It's a huge pleasure to be here and to have been involved with the judging for the Environmental Poet of the Year award this year. Along with John and Jane, it was quite a transformative and quite an emotional judging process, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, Lindsay? And we spent a lot of time debating the idea of what this prize was for, not because of lack of clear guidance from the Michael Marks Awards, but because it's such a difficult and important issue, I think, to work out what environmental poetry is and can be and should be, that goes right to the heart of what we do as poets and how we can kind of feel that we're going beyond sort of shouting into a void, or writing poetry that might be considered to be nature poetry but not environmental. And there's something within the guidelines about this prize that says that environmental poetry is distinct from nature poetry. It's at least partly driven by uncertainty about the shifting environment, its future, and the place of the human within it. And John Aitchison in particular, who was judging some of these poems and reading some of them, I believe, while filming lions and in the gaps between the lions appearing and being awake, which is the most rock and roll thing I've ever heard. He was really a tireless advocate for thinking about how poems could how the poetry could move beyond observation and could reflect on the place of the human within the environment. Because, of course, if we're thinking about environmental poetry, we're thinking about what we've done as humans. And yeah, I think I should hand over to, because everybody doesn't want to hear from me, but from Tom as a whale expert.
Well, thanks, Helen. It just gives me such joy to be here for Jane today, because I absolutely love these poems. But I'll tell you about COP if you'd like. You might wonder what whale poems or whales are doing at COP at all. We were there because, firstly, COP has lots of poetry at it and lots of arts in general. There's a strong understanding, at least among some of the attendees, that to make unimaginable changes happen requires changes to imagination, and the arts is what pushes this. The story of how we saved the whales has a parallel with the climate crisis, which is that we knew we were extracting them to extinction. We got so good at extracting them, this fuel source that we were hunting the blue whale, the biggest one, down to just 400 left with these giant factory ships, and we didn't look like we were going to stop. The science was really clear, but what changed us really was the discovery that they sing and the beauty of their songs. This discovery and its move through human culture with listening parties and people sharing these songs and caring more about them, this is what galvanised the Save the Whales movement. The first person to play whale vocalisations was Rachel Carson, the great ecologist, in 1951. So it's a very long tradition of listening to nature. And it was the first great environmental success story. And that's why we were at COP, was to remind people that if you listen and you work on your imagination and you care, things can shift, even with giant, unmovable extractive industries. So we were there sharing these beautiful poems as well, and a lot of people there really loved them. There was one day I wanted to read one on a stage, but then I was told that you're not allowed to, this was the Dubai rules, that you couldn't get anything on the programme that hadn't been pre-approved. This was a bit sad for the poem that I wanted to read, but it's okay because we shared it around, loads of people read it. But it was actually quite funny because we'd also submitted a film, but we'd submitted the wrong version, which was the not safe for work version, and it had been approved by the Dubai authorities. And so I think quite a few hundred diplomats sat down and had the words "beelining for my ball sack" beamed at them, which was terrific. Anyway, COP's loss. So I just want, anyway. Poems and art matter, even in changing giant, unflinching industries. And your poems, Jane, are just sublime. And I was so excited to meet you. And I don't know if you've seen this pamphlet. It's got seaweed in it, which is absolutely beautiful. And the way you should tell these guys how you describe that. I've spent a lot of time around whales. I've been landed on by one. I filmed them underwater. I've thought about them for a long time, a lot of the time. I've never managed to find words like the words you found for them, and the words you found for them changed the way I see them now. And after I read your poems, it crystallised things that were kind of uncrystallisable before. So thank you. You've asked me to read one, and I feel freaking intimidated because you're all word people. So I'll give it a go, but be kind. Okay, this one's called Say Grey. And they're the names of two whales. And grey whale isn't named after its colour, it's named after a man called Grey who used to hunt whales, I think, that's right. Sadly, many whales are named after the people who used to kill them, so I think we should change that. She is the colour of ages, merle of slate, chalk-snagged barnacle husk, underbelly ridged. Krill in opaline carpets on the waves, is sieved in slow motion swallows. Death in her baleen-feathered ivory smile. Her tongue twines the ocean. Carving a path through the waves, her panels of leaden fin give salutation. She turns a corkscrew, shows the web of scars. She has endured teeth, wears the bites. They, the signature of survival. The hole in her head blows a kiss to the sun, dazzles a spectrum in rainbow mist. Her body rolls, knuckles of spine curving her back to the sea. Her flute beats at the sky, a huge grey butterfly, dragged down to its death.
I was about to tell you what the judges admired about Jane's work and about this remarkable pamphlet, but I think that poem really, really illustrates it perfectly. But we talked about this a lot. We talked about all of the work over and over and over, and we kept coming back to this particular collection. I think all three of us thought that 1,000 Miles from the Sea is a rare and remarkable collection of poems which shows a great capacity for empathy and also an impressive command of form. They're tightly controlled pieces which examine every aspect of whaling, from the human perspective to the voice of the whale. Yes, there is a poem in the voice of a whale in here. It's a wholly original pamphlet packed with brilliant images, visceral and raw, tender and heartfelt. Weather doesn't just act upon land, it gobbles colour from the walls. A whale is the colour of ages, as you heard in that piece. The poetry haunted each of us, even bringing us to tears, and it has the impact that this prize is all about. We felt that the poems carried a message not only of our destructive human behaviours, but also of hope and that we can change. It's remarkable and beautiful, and we urge you to read it. So I think maybe I should introduce Jane now. Jane Byrne is an award-winning poet, artist and hybrid writer. She's a working-class pansexual person with autism and has an MA in writing poetry, not creative writing, from Newcastle University, where she won an academic prize in 2022 for Best Overall Performance. She's explored her neurodivergent writers' theories funded by Arts Council England and is currently putting these ideas into a book. This pamphlet is just stunning, and it's wonderful that you're going to hear a reading and you're going to hear from Jane herself. So please welcome Jane Byrne. We really are being the Chuckle Brothers now. We were trying to work out when to leave the stage and who should leave first.
Thank you.
Welcome, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so beautifully read. And thank you for that introduction, Helen. And to the other judges, of course, for thinking so much of my work. I just wanted to say to Lady Marks that the most important thing for me about these awards and the entering of them was that it was free, because it would have prevented someone like me, a marginalised writer, from entering. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I also want to beg your indulgence and read a little something I wrote about this pamphlet. 1,000 Miles from the Sea began 9 years ago when I was reflecting upon the use of whale imagery in some of my writing. Beauty, power and mystery lend to whales an almost mythical quality. They seem a gift to the poet, and we creative writers are ever adept at harvesting the existence of them in order to feed the hungriness of our work. How often, I challenged myself, do you think of the deeper existence of these beings? How often do you push your work beyond what is a set of beautiful images ready and waiting to be plundered? Have you thought about what would become of your work if you allowed a deeper level of meaning in? What respect to these creatures ought to be paid? What and who is whale? With this question in mind, I began to gather details, physical specifics, locations, behaviours, terminology. At a technical level, such details lend your work a very similitude it otherwise might not have. The best thing about research is the way it opens out pathways of thought, those fascinating rabbit holes that one can lose hours vanishing Alice-like down into. As I progressed with my research, I became deeply affected by the myriad incredible facts to be learned and the amount of stunning footage that documents these phenomenal mammals. Of course, I knew about the terrible history of whaling, but the more I studied it, the more I was awakened to the dreadful truth of human depredation of the cetacean population. I knew that I couldn't simply aim for my poems to be only beautiful. I had to ask my poems to bridge an important gap between the incredible presence of whales in the world and the devastating legacy of the whaling industry. These poems have become a dialogue, a concatenation between intersections of love and loss, grief and commercial greed, opprobrium and survival, terrain and sea, trauma and meliorism. I used my poems to negotiate the overwhelming emotions this research gave rise to. I have never had the privilege of encountering a whale's actual physical presence. I have not been able to travel to South Georgia in what many might consider a real, traditional, expected way. This does not mean that I have never been. The power of expansive, mindful and thorough research is my way of visiting South Georgia in order to articulate the history and details of the Leith Harbour whaling station's landscape and the lives of the people who worked to earn a living among such atrocities. In harvesting imagery from whales to oil the wheels of my writing, I could not help but draw parallels to the oils, flesh and bones that humankind destroyed thousands and thousands of whales for. Their lives were stolen so we could have light, so that we could be clean, fed and corseted. That is a terrible thought. Many of the poems in this sequence have placed my voice as whale voice. I have spoken through them. With an intention to redress the balance, I have included a poem which is a translation of an actual piece of recorded whale song. I felt the best respect I could pay the whale was to transcribe what I heard as faithfully as possible, to foreground the whale and background the human, to let the whale use me as a vessel to give the whale back its voice. Humans have been and have always will be capable of destruction and of denying their role in the climate emergency. Yet humans maintain the stories that keep vital information about history alive, so that subsequent generations can remain informed about ecological disasters like whaling and hopefully make the choice to continue the protection of them and the environment in which they live, thus supporting their right to live equally on Earth. It is my hope that these poems will serve as a catalyst for numerous necessary conversations. I cannot raise a physical stone monument to the incalculable climacteric tragedies of whaling, but I felt I could offer these poems as a memorial. To not speak the past, to allow it to be swept beneath time's rug, is to leave the door to future cataclysm ajar. To lament and to reflect upon the loss of so many lives through my poems is something I felt I could do in the hope of further promulgating the narratives which must be kept within the purview of all. To remember is to protect, to not shy away from the words that need to be spoken is love. And I'm going to read a couple of poems from the pamphlet as well. This first poem was written in reaction to a picture which is in the Royal Scottish Geographical Society of 9 men standing on the body of a whale they have killed and are about to take to pieces. 9 men on a whale. She is dead. On the deck, herself awaiting the flens, waiting for men to unmake her blankets, gaff them away. Pass her on to the lemmers to strip her of meat and bone. 9 fellows paused and proud for the sake of this photograph, paused on her side, marking the place of her ribs with their booted feet. After the camera's click, they turned back to the pillage, worked her invisible. Her splinter of lower jaw hangs loose. The rest of her head lies like a sea cobble, weighted, stony, still. She must have been a sight in full breach. Her blood wets the ground. The chain that will heft her leftovers presses its links to her stomach soft. Over her corpse, snatches of song. They sang, they caught, sang and caught. The bleached land hears, the Red Sea hears. 45 more. 45 more. Shall I just read one more? Pardon? Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. This poem is called Whale Finger. I swim around this island, so very quiet now. The Scotia Sea rolls around the capes. Disappointment, the deep indent of doubtful bay. Bitter cool with beryl ice, spots of spray where wave meets berg, flash spectrums before coming back to the wet. I steal a peep of faraway sun before the fall of night. I am a survivor. I remember when they took my mother. My first year, I prospered on her milk, suckled joy from the flat shale of her sides. She taught me the twist and turn of oceans, showed me krill. I think I saw her, gentle in the South Georgia swell, her loveliness unready for the pierce of steel. Around us, detonated flesh. I cried, threaded my squeaks and clicks in the shape of her name. Men loomed the stanchions, guessed the value of our bulk. Everything slick. The screams of say whales greased the air with fear. Prows frothed scarlet, boilers waited, ready lit, and everywhere the stench. Each breath I had to take was poison. Smoke of friends, of lovers, thick in my lungs. The last taste of them ached on my tongue. We lived like peas in pods, families singing, feeding, voiding our blowholes at the sky. I cruised the deep for miles, sending out my call. It echoes into nothing. For decades this coast was littered with flesh, with stripped skin, drifting vertebrae strings. This was all that remained of brother, father, uncle, sister, mother. Those butchers turned this place to a boneyard. Their hands rotted from hours spent in our meat. Crazed by the sickness, all that spilling, stabbing, winter long and dark. The doctors had no pill for this, I had no pity. The shores, rank with asbestos, ran with slicks of shame. A place rooted to its core with loss is easy to forget, so far away. I cannot quit this circling. Here is where they spread my mother's soul. I skim over rib and skull, see the floating bullet of a hull above my head. I go below, sink to the safety of skeleton kin. I am a survivor. Your touch is the death of all things. Thank you so much.
Wow, follow that, as they say. That was magnificent. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the Wordsworth Trust and Wordsworth Grasmere, what a pleasure and a privilege it is for us to be a partner in the Michael Marks Awards for Poetry Pamphlets, and in particular to be involved with the Environmental Poet of the Year Awards. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Jane Caven, who's represented us on the judging panel for the second year, and I know that this has been a transformative experience for Jane. In winning the Environmental Poet of the Year Awards, Jane is following in some illustrious footsteps, of course, the inaugural winner last year, Linda France, and if you're going to go further back in time, we can go back to arguably our first environmental poet, William Wordsworth. Now, Wordsworth's great wish for his poetry was that it should live and do good. That sense of poetry as an active force for change is something that we embrace wholeheartedly at Wordsworth Grasmere. Whether it's an exhibition of contemporary responses to Wordsworth's exhortation to let nature be your teacher, or whether it's a guided walk for schools looking at biodiversity through a Wordsworthian lens, we demonstrate Wordsworth's continuing relevance in a time of climate crisis. Wordsworth celebrated our interconnectedness with the natural world and cautioned against what he called our meddling intellect, interfering with and upsetting the balance of the thing that sustains us. Instead, Wordsworth believed that we should bring to our engagement with nature a heart that watches and receives, something that Jane has shown in abundance in her poems. This evening's awards effectively begin Jane's year as Environmental Poet of the Year, and I'm sure that she'll be very much looking forward to a trip to Greece in 2024. Not quite so warm in Grasmere, but we can guarantee Jane a very warm welcome when she comes to Wordsworth Grasmere to read from her pamphlet, to share her craft, and to inspire others. But as Lindsey has already said, you don't need to wait until then to experience 1,000 Miles from the Sea. It's available at the bookstall this evening, and very shortly will be available both online and in a physical form in the shops at Wordsworth Grasmere. Thank you all very much for coming along this evening and for supporting the cause of poetry, and those two of you listening and watching online. It's really important, the work that you do to sustain us in these very challenging times. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Me again. And huge congratulations to Jane. It's just so good to finally hear your poems being read and to hear you talk about them in the way that you just did in front of a group of people. So that was wonderful. Thank you. So we're now leaving behind our new prize and entering the final section of tonight's event. We're back to the annual awards for published pamphlets, and our last for tonight is the Poetry Award. This prize is for £5,000 plus the Greek Cultural Tour in association with the Harvard University Centre for Hellenic Studies. Our first poet is Kate Hendry with her pamphlet MX Simp from Maviscat Press. Kate's travelled down from Scotland to be with us here tonight. She's lived there for over 30 years, working as an English teacher at a secondary school. Her first collection, The Lost Original, appeared with Happenstance Press in 2016. She's been widely published in magazines, won a number of awards, and also written a novel. MX Simp impressed all of the judges. Speaking about it, they said, neither simple nor brief, the experiences Hendry portrays here are laid out with tender warmth and an understated poetic stylishness. Please welcome Kate Hendry.
Thank you, Lindsey, and thank you, judges, and thank you, Mariscat, and congratulations to Mariscat. I'm so delighted that you won. I'm amazed to be here. My pamphlet, as you know, is called MX-SIMP, which is the medical abbreviation for simple mastectomy, and the poems are about my treatment for breast cancer a few years ago. The poem I'm going to read takes place halfway through chemotherapy, when the vein in my arm gave up the ghost and the doctors had to put a line directly into my chest to deliver the chemotherapy. And that line is called a Hickman line. And the poem is called Mark, Michelle, the Monkey, and Me. You're with Mark, the nurse, him chatting to you about running and your new black trainers, the ones your brother sent you because of your blisters, not because you run. You don't. You haven't run anywhere for months. You're with Mark, him handing you a diary for the district nurse to fill in every week, every time she flushes out your Hickman line, which in an hour's time will hang from a hole in your chest like a bathroom light pull. You're on your own, reading the warnings on page 1. What to do if your line blocks with blood clots, gets infected, falls out. There's a number to phone. Don't panic, it says, but ring right away. You're with Mark, walking into theatre, climbing on the table, sliding your arms out of the sleeves of your disposable hospital gown. You're with the surgeon and a team of nurses, them chatting to you about what they're doing, painting you with brown iodine, building a green tent around your head because you're not to see the surgeon slicing open your chest and neck. You're with Mark, whose face is a hand length away. You're to look at him throughout. You're to squeeze the limbless rubber monkey he gives you, not his hand, because of COVID. You're with the orange rubber monkey, while the surgeon's cutting the skin at your collarbone, pushing the white silicone tube into your jugular towards your vena cava. It feels like he's strangling you. He's telling you he needs you to relax. You're not to breathe heavily. You say you don't know how to breathe. He says shallowly, or else he'll have to down tools and book you in for a general, which would delay your chemotherapy. So you lock eyes with Mark and remember being in labour, staying perfectly still for the anaesthetist to inject the drug into your spine. You picture your boy now, 17 years later, and stay still for him once more. You're with the porter, him wheeling you back to the ward, across acres of hospital, down corridors, up lifts, through swing doors, the box of tissues Mark gave you on your lap, your headscarf unravelling. You're in a room with a woman whose doctors pull the concertina curtain round her, tell her stomach pains because her cancer's spread. She says, how did it move from her cervix? They say her lymph nodes carried it. You're in the room with the woman whose cancer has spread. You discover you've bled through the bandage. There's no buzzer by your bed, so you drag the blood pressure machine to which you are attached into the empty corridor and call out, "Excuse me." You're in the room with the woman whose cancer has spread and you're bleeding again. This time, blood is dripping down your arm and chest, seeping through your gown. 2 more nurses arrive, tape inflated bags of air like giant bubble wrap to your wound. But you bleed again, You're with a doctor, a student, who staunches the flow till her hands shake, who tells you this is what they do for gunshot wounds. She's learning how to manage uncertainty. You ask how you do that. She's not sure yet. But the bleeding stopped. You're with them all the cancer patients. The woman with cancer spreading through her stomach, who is your loneliness? The woman in the next cubicle, waiting for a liver biopsy, who is your fear? The old woman with breast cancer and dementia, who is your confusion? And Michelle, who appears in the night, who is bone thin and hunched, who passes by the foot of your bed in her slippers, shuffling to the bathroom, who knows how to get chips, even though they aren't on the menu, who jokes of the endless cards and bouquets that come with dying, whose date of birth, 10th of the 3rd, 69, is so close to yours, who is your death. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. Our next poet is Courtney Conrad, with her pamphlet, I Am Evidence, From Blood Axe and Mercilexia. This is her debut pamphlet, and the poems in it won the 2022 Mercilexia Women's Poetry Pamphlet Competition. She won an Eric Gregory Award in 2022 and has been called by Robin Robertson an important voice to watch, calling this pamphlet a new shot in the Caribbean artist movement. Our judges said that while these poems bear witness to the most brutal violence, the collection is not without joy, because love is always present at the table. Please welcome on stage Courtney Conrad.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, Michael Marks and partners. I'm grateful to be shortlisted. Thank you to the judges. I'll be reading 2 poems for you from I Am Evidence. The first is Inner the Trenches. Bellies ball out like mongrels, but hot girl no walk a street and beg. Mother drive youths round with gas tanks swirling droplets like bear keg. Searching for night with no guest lists, serving meaty manish water and steam fish. Before school runs, mother creeps out to rough up ATMs, tears grease debit cards, empty hands send slack-jaw youths to breakfast clubs for ackee, dumpling and tea. At dinner time, she scouts supermarket aisles. You didn't know say water bill could have wrap bully beef, and pockets can turn measuring cup full of flour. Youths empty mothers' money stash pots, while landlords' bolt cutter hands vanish padlocks. Bedtime reach them in the parking lot. Mother and youths interlock like Tetris blocks on the back seat. Mother say youths them have to eat, even if there must be a kneeling. Thank you. And the final piece I will be reading is Extradition of Drug Lord Dudus Cooke, Barbican Girl Dashwe Tivoli Boy. Dudus, breathtaker of dirty youths preying on little girls' cell phones and chochos. He pretzels politicians' arms so fathers can teeth light to keep stoves on. His cash lines the bras of single mothers who send their sons to your school with their A-stars, waves, and Clark shoes. Prime Minister Bruce Golding approves Dudus's extradition. Youths, principals, intercom interrupts lunchtime. Year group becomes a herd of whispers. shuffling to collect bags, ears cock for loose lips like staff walkie-talkies. Everyone sprints to their drivers. Your boy shoves himself into a Tivoli Chichi bus that mounts sidewalks to get him home. Meanwhile, your Barbican Prada cruises to water polo training. At training, with every other stroke, you glance at the plumes of smoke in the distance, coming from Tivoli. Police helicopters chopping your coach's commands. You have 3 missed calls from your boy. You listen to his voicemail when you get home. He says, Jano, me no know if me and my family them I go make it. But if them send me shoot after police, I lie them I tell. Meanwhile, in the name of President Dudus, Tivoli gunmen were shot after shot, not even a spot check for granny-less verandas, scrap vehicles and gas cylinders block cherry-stained streets. Your boy's eardrums grind like pimento. His little sister and brothers squeal stow in the kitchen cupboard. From his bedroom window, he prays 3 of his brethrens, plead the blood of Jesus as they sit in their own pooling, while rumors have it, on the ground, Dudus is a sewer rat wearing a stiff wig for disguise. The next day, Prime Minister calls a state of emergency for Tivoli. You neither adjust nor die, but your boy vanishes for a while. You ramp next to his empty desk, ask about his whereabouts, but not enough. In the Tivoli community, mothers are graduating from sniffing foreheads, green armpits to heaving at compost flesh. Top lips marrying snotty nose tips, single beds, open caskets. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Our next poet is Blake Morrison, with his pamphlet Skin and Blister, published by Guillemot Press. Blake has been Professor of Creative and Life Writing at Goldsmiths University since 2003. He's written 2 best-selling memoirs and 4 novels, as well as many poetry collections. His latest memoir, 2 Sisters, comes out later this year. The judges loved this pamphlet for the way the sonnet form is not in any way obtrusive. Instead of getting in the way of this difficult subject, the loss of his sister, it enables the, and I quote, raw emotion to shine right through. Please welcome Blake Morrison.
Thank you. Good evening. My sister Jill died in 2019. We were very close in age, just 16 months apart. We'd grown up together, just the 2 of us. Her death was a shock, and I wanted to write about her, and did, and finished a prose book about her, and thought, that's it, I've said everything that needs to be said. And then I found in the summer of 2021 that I was writing poems about her, and or really something about the constraint of the poetic form was offering something different, and I was kind of speaking to her rather than about her. So I'm very pleased that Mariscat, Hamish and Diana liked the pamphlet. I'm very grateful to the Michael Marks Awards and Lady Marks, because it's such an important way for poetry to be read and received. Thank you to the judges for shortlisting me. It's been a big boost. I'm going to read just 2 poems. The first one, Sister Sestina. I love the way they echo each other. And as you know, you're all poets. There are 6 words get repeated. One of them, all too aptly, drink. Death dropped its guillotine on my sister. She wouldn't have seen it coming. She's blind. was blind. I haven't got used to the tense. I confuse those still living with those past. What gets me through the evenings is drink. Ironic that, since drink is what killed her. I'm guessing it's unlikely you've met her. We were close, I think, though I've no other sister to compare. Small, curly-haired, fond of a drink, she was, by the end, officially blind. A woman so bright that nothing got past her, could see only when the light was intense, which made every excursion a tense affair, for others as well as for her, her hand clutching your arm as you steered her past banana skins and cracks. But my sister was tough, didn't whinge about being blind, was cheery and stoical until drink took over, when all she'd want was more drink, cheap wine mostly, not just to feel less tense, but to black out the knowledge she was blind, then fall asleep till nothing could stir her. There she'd be, out like a light, my poor kid sister, immune to her children, though she loved them past words, overwhelmed by a habit passed down through the genes. I too like a drink, you see. We've that in common, my sister and me, a weakness for booze. I make no pretense about it. In a way, I'm weaker than her, since I've no excuse. It's not like I'm blind and needing solace, whereas she went half blind when her kids were small. All that's in the past, and if ever I get angry and blame her for deserting us, I tell myself that drink gave her no choice. The need grew too intense, and night dropped its guillotine on my sister. Because of drink, she's in the wrong tense. I had a sister who was stoic and blind. Now she's passed, and I write poems for her. I'll just read one of the sonnets. Our lives went in very different directions, but this was a different kind of moment. In this photo, from my 21st, we look to be flirting. You're in a low-cut dress, sleeveless, sparkly, silver grey, and your eyes are wide as if we're sharing a joke or a piece of gossip. In the background, a woman I don't recognise is eyeing us coldly. Perhaps she took us not for siblings, but a girl making out with her new boyfriend. In the story of that time, I used to tell myself we'd nothing in common. I left and spent 3 years at uni. You stayed behind. But here we are, something between us still, tête-à-tête in the middle of a party. Your eyes so bright, their light can never die. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Clementine E Burnley is our next poet with her pamphlet Radical Pairings from Ignition Press. Clementine was born in Cameroon and now lives and works in Germany and the UK. In fact, like Kate Hendry, she's travelled down from Edinburgh to be with us tonight. She has an MSc in Applied Linguistics from the University of Manchester and is a part-time practice-based student of conflict mediation. She was the Royal Society of Literature Sky Award winner for creative non-fiction in 2021, and her poems have appeared widely in magazines. The judges praised Clementine's hauntingly beautiful powers of description, noting that this pamphlet is incredible and alive to the cultural contradictions between homes old and new. Please welcome Clementine E Burnley.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who was involved because this was really a team project. I'd like to thank everyone at Ignition Press, especially my editor, Claire Cox, and my family who have had to put up with me muttering and twiddling my pens for quite some time. I'm going to read, I'll just read the poem. Wolf. Though our ancestors hunted her kind through highland rainforests 10,000 years ago, Though nettles grow up over hill scars, through a stand of dock she watches, curious. Boys lay a perimeter of piss around a canvas tent. Triangled ears turn to the sounds of their small, safe deaths, their tenderness. A wolf is spotted aboard a train in Brussels. In pubs on the Polish-German border, instead of musk deer, staghorn ferns are nailed to wooden trophy boards. She leaves a boggy stink in stairwells near Glasgow Green. The treads never wash clean of her. Watchfires linger after 3 pregnant wolves are shot on the way to France. Near the Forest of Dean, a dog walker raises the alarm. When night blots out the purple of Pennyroyal, the search for wolves is abandoned. Among brambles so thick, a pizza box is a smudge in the surveillance footage. The DNA profile captured in her scat is tagged lone female. She leaves a paw print between the daylilies. The shadow of an overhead power line marks her flank. And I was a bit nervous when I started, and so I didn't actually thank the judges and the Michael Marks Award as well. It's such an honor to be on this list, especially having listened to the poets who have already read. How to Eat Frogs. Grandmother's croak, welcome. Crows watch from a sagging power line while I unpack the bulky suitcase. Grandmothers test me with my sisters engaged to marry sons of the soil. Grandmothers think my nose ring is for free girls. Ask, did you swallow cloven hoofs or horse meat? So why do you rob our peace? Do your shoulders move one by one when you dance them wire? Who fed you eggs before you were 2? Who named you Swallow? Where's your umbilical buried? What kinny thing ate your tongue? In the market, between purple pyramids of piled up tomatoes, orange kuluba and bush plums, grandmothers ask, how many homeboys has your Enikankeles tok mouth thrown away? The cool palm is a benediction to my forehead before grandmothers squat at the fireplace muttering, if you're going to cook a white frog, choose a fat one. If you're going to eat snails, don't expect to win a 100-meter dash. I'm asking my grandmothers if we were too much too soon, too loud, too young. We all need sweetness, they reply, but would you rather be a meal or a snack? My grandmothers ask, if you give the milk away for free, who's going to buy the cow? Thank you.
Thank you, Clementine. Our next poet is Sammy Weaver, with her pamphlet Angola, America, published by Seven. Sammy is originally from Hay-on-Wye and now lives in West Yorkshire. She won the Moth magazine's Nature Writing Competition in 2020, and her poems have appeared widely in magazines, including the Irish Times. She has a creative writing MA from Manchester Metropolitan University. She studied anthropology before becoming interested in prison reform, and this latter interest fed into her poems in Angola, America. Before I mention the judges' comments on the poems, I will add that Fiona Benson, who was one of the 4 judges, did actually sit out on the discussions of this pamphlet. It's perhaps even more impressive that it rose to the shortlist based solely on the views of the other 3 judges. They praised Sammy's blend of empathy and humanity with raw, often visceral accounts. This is a must-read pamphlet, they said. Please welcome Sammy Weaver.
Fiona's words are on the back, by the way. So thank you so much. It's a real joy to be here. I'm utterly chuffed to be shortlisted in such lovely company with the other amazing poets. Thank you to the Michael Marks Awards for putting these on. It's such a lovely award to celebrate the small and beautiful world of pamphlets and to support poets doing them. Thank you to the judges, of course. So I'm going to read 2 poems. The first one... the poems are, I'll give you a little bit of context. I became friends with a man who's on death row in Louisiana State Penitentiary, which is the state's largest maximum security prison. He's been on death row for 15 years, so we became friends, and the poems kind of came out of that correspondence. Louisiana State Penitentiary is also known as Angola. You might have heard of it. It's had quite a notorious past. And it used to be a slave plantation back in the 18th century. So some of the poems tried to explore that legacy of slavery in the mass incarceration of people of colour in the States. One thing that Angola prison has is a museum. And in that museum is all sorts of different exhibits from its gruesome past, one of which is an electric chair, which used to tour the parishes of Louisiana, picking up lives as it went. Exhibit, electric chair. She still holds the grain of the tree that made her, and the name they gave her, gruesome Gertie, sitting there in the museum like a chair sits, unassumingly, except she's rigged with leather at the legs and wrists. Which southern tree was she? A swamp cypress with her root buttress submerged in the slow mirror of the bayou? Back when her phloem flowed with sap, back when she spoke only pollen and symbols of leaves to the wind. Now her oval knots have blinked open her varnish, as if all the tension of living were translated in lignin, as if her many dead left her like the memory of empty nests. And the next poem I'm going to read is called Asylum. So the poems in this have been described as kind of proto or ghost sonnets, and I definitely kind of, the lines by Terence Hayes, the brilliant American poet, kind of guided me through with the form. His lines, I lock you in an American sonnet that is part prison, part panic closet, a little room in a house set aflame. So the sonnet, or some kind of ghostly sonnet, seemed like a good form for these poems. And also I was interested in how the sonnet is a little song. So Asylum. Dr. John, with his throat of rusty iron, got locked in you, sang a song for you. A 17-minute anthem driven by the beat of collapsing chains. Kevin Gates, with a tear on his face, got locked in you, sang a song for you. The tear remained unchanged. Lil Boosie, with his red eyes rolling back inside his head, got locked in you, sang a song for you. They say I'm a role model, but I ain't got no role model. Lead belly, with the asylum of his accordion and howl, got locked in you, sang a song for you, of how the boll weevil looked for a home in the holes of the cotton. James Booker, got locked in you, sang a song for you. His fingers singed the keys of the piano like flames in dry grass. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Fahad Al-Amoudi is our last poet of the night, shortlisted with his pamphlet When the Flies Come, from Ignition Press. That's the second one from Ignition Press tonight. Fahad is a poet and editor of Ethiopian and Yemeni heritage, based in London. He was the winner of the 2022 White Review Poetry Prize. His work has appeared in Poetry London, Butcher's Dog, Bath Mag, among others, and he's edited publications including Magma. He is an Obsidian alumnus, writing squad graduate, and member of Malika's Poetry Kitchen. He writes short fiction as well as poetry. The judges said that his poems in this pamphlet are written with extraordinary precision and delicacy. They felt the creativity of this pamphlet striking, as imagined letters home are rendered in the voice of a young Ethiopian prince. Please welcome Fahad Al-Amoudi.
Wow. Thank you to the judges. Thank you to the Michael Marks Award. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Yeah. Is that good? Cool. Thank you to the judges, to the Michael Marks Award and partners. It's an honour and a privilege to be shortlisted amongst such wonderful poetry and poets, and some very close friends as well. So it's a special honour. Thank you to the team at Ignition Press for believing in the work. I'm going to read the longest poem from the pamphlet and the shortest poem. The first one is called The Night You Saw Marvin, and it's based on what I hopefully think is a true story, that in 1980 Marvin Gaye was meant to perform at a Royal Command performance in Drury Lane, and he turned up extremely late and very inebriated, and long after everyone had left, and performed to the cleaning staff. And I think that's a wonderful story, and I wanted to try and imagine what that was like. The Night You Saw Marvin. The song begins in the tenor of water, slow frets, twists, the threat of a melody strummed by the hair of a mop and bucket. This is your face at the end of the day's shift, when the stage is stripped naked to a piano, the ruin of instruments chiaroscuroed, your arms an ecstasy of dry ice staggering to the back of the theatre. A long carpet, studded in kernels blinking at the stage. Up there, the spotlight dilates, yawns in the heat of an adolescent night, where a homeless man looks at a twopence through one eye, its shadow enveloping a fossil of moon. Can you believe it? A man enters a place like this, seats still chattering. He is a spectral presence, brings with him the metallurgy of night, the splash of drums, the circle of horns catching fire in sequence. The light finds him, pulls back the frills, an open tuxedo, a bow tied limp on his shoulders, his jacket a trumpet flare on a sliding key, keeping him upright. But then he sings, Mother, Mother, and the columns thin, pupil slits strain, bars tighten around your lungs, his unsteady vibrato weak, light-headed, a beached fish, silver against the fishmonger's knife. Here the body sublimes. Marvin's falsetto chimes through the theatre, unsheathed, like construction tarp ripped from the skin. His long runs take you home, to your mustard commode, brass, needle, wax, where years from now, clad in blue midnight, you will see the shadow of his ghost surge through your fingers, gripping the handrests up to the ball and socket of your shoulder, where a familiar whisper will turn the joint loose, like a door opening somewhere far away, the sound of the last lone applause. I should also have said that that poem was inspired by the American poet Linda Hull and her poem Lost View Cruchet, which is a wonderful, wonderful poem. And Linda Hull was an incredible poet, unfortunately died very young. I'm going to read the shortest poem from the pamphlet, which is also, I guess, the title poem technically. It's called Sost Kulcha, which is an Amharic phrase that means 3 stones and is often used as a metaphor for the nuclear family and kind of the hearth and the home in general. And it's inspired by 2 poets, 2 Ethiopian poets, Meron Getenet and Guillemot, the latter of whom is a giant, a legend in Ethiopian poetry. The small fire that smiles between 3 stones in winter thinks itself a hearth, even as it burns a kitchen's pitted belly, even as it dies. The stones leavened, once a ripened fruit, now bloated for the flies to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. So you've now heard from all of the poets shortlisted, and hasn't it been good listening to them all? But we have to move on to the subject of an overall winner, not losing sight of the fact that everybody here is a winner. And I'm delighted to introduce Judge Fiona Benson. Now, you may remember that Fiona won our Greek Bicentennial Prize in 2021, but wasn't then able to appear with us here in person. Sorry, I'm trying to turn my page. Because of the pandemic, so it's very, very nice to have her here with us tonight at last in the same room. We're delighted indeed that she was able to judge this prize. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Her most recent collection, Ephemeron, was shortlisted for the 2022 T.S. Eliot Prize and Rathbones Folio Prize. Her second book, Vertigo and Ghost, won the Forward Poetry Prize. And then Bright Travellers received the Seamus Heaney Prize for First Collection, as well as the Geoffrey Faber Memorial Prize. She lives in mid-Devon with her husband and 2 daughters. So, Fiona's going to say a few words and then announce the overall winner of the Poetry Award. Please give her a big welcome.
It's such a joy to be here celebrating poetry pamphlets, and thank you to the Michael Marks Awards and everybody that helps support this prize. Most of us have our first start with a pamphlet, almost without exception. It's where we all start, and it's such an amazing thing, and it's so lovely that it's getting its rightful attention with this award. I'd like to say that I don't feel like a judge. We're just readers, and any other panel of readers would have come up with a different list and a different winner. We're all just readers. So me and my fellow readers, Steve Cleary of the British Library, Laura Janssen for the Harvard Centre for Hellenic Studies, and Imogen Castles, the brilliant TLS critic and poet, had over 100 pamphlets to read. Is that right? So our shortlisting meeting was rather inevitably very tough, and we all had to discard pamphlets that we were strongly attached to. However, once the dust had cleared and we kind of bandaged up our fists and got over the ordeal, we emerged with a shortlist that we are all immensely proud of, and I feel it has great integrity. These are 6 pamphlets of gorgeous astonishment, craft, and nerve. So you've heard everybody now. So it's such a delight to share all these beautiful pamphlets and voices tonight, and to hear them. It's just incredible to hear you all after having been reading you for so long. So we had Fahad Al-Amoudi, When the Flies Come, Poems of Exile and its attendant dislocations, rendered with a supple syntax and a haunting turn of phrase. Clementine E Burnley's beautiful radical pairings with its array of unforgettable, disruptive speakers and its wry humour and tender sensitivity. Kate Henry's Mux Simp, a complex and honest account of breast cancer treatment acutely observed and with a gift for simile that quite frankly I covet. Blake Morrison's grief-filled Skin and Blister, a poignant account of a sister's life, alcoholism, and too early death, using sonnet and sestina to devastating effect. Sammy Weaver, I don't hate her, that's not why I recuse. Sounds like I've got a grudge against you, Sammy. It's just that I blurbed her, and I also know Sammy, so I had to say I've got to step back from this discussion. But Angola America is an investigation of the Louisiana penitentiary, as Sammy said. It's fiercely political, empathetic, and humane, and an absolute wonder. These are all must-read pamphlets, and you need to go and buy multiple copies for yourself and to give away. But one pamphlet stood out for us for its sheer nerve and virtuosic use of the pamphlet form. Courtney Conrad's I Am Evidence. I don't really need to say these words, do I? We all know how brilliant you are. These are startling poems of personal, social, and political resonance. It has the reach and impact of a long novel, and each poem explodes from the page. Please welcome the winner of the Michael Marks Poetry Pamphlet Award, Courtney Conrad.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again to the judges and for the Michael Marks Awards and their partners. It's so funny because this pamphlet, I had been working on what was supposed to be my debut collection for a couple of years, and I kind of got frustrated and I wasn't sure if what I was writing was going to make sense, or if the poems were going to make sense, or if people cared about what I was talking about. And a friend of mine said, just choose a couple of the poems from the collection that you're working on and develop a pamphlet and see. And that's what I Am Evidence is. First and foremost, I have to thank God, because boy, writing a book is not easy. And I think sometimes we have a dream and sometimes it can tarry and it can feel like it's never coming. And the work, it can just be very... Yeah, and for anyone who's working on something and it feels like it's tiring and it's not coming, have faith in your work. If God's promised it to you, it will come to fruition. There's a Bible verse called Isaiah 60:22, and it basically says, at the appointed time, I, the Lord, will make it happen. And this was the appointed time, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my parents who support me through everything I do, and whose work ethic I get. They're quite the workaholics, and I am so proud to be their kid. Thank you to, oh my gosh, listen, Fahad Al-Amoudi, the best editor, up-and-coming editor. Please keep your eyes on him, as well as a poet. Fahad, Oakley Flanagan, and Telu Agbalusi literally sat through these poems and pushed me and edited them so meticulously. I'm so grateful for all three of you. I'm grateful to Miss Lexia and BB for publishing. Thanks. Big up God.
Congratulations, Courtney, and everyone involved in the pamphlet. I can see the response in the room is immense, so really heartfelt congratulations. And thank you also to Fiona Benson. We're now almost at the end of the night, but it's not entirely an end to the event. There will be footage of this at some point. We'll put it on our website, so you'll be able to see that in the coming weeks if you've missed any of it today. I'd like to again thank everyone who's been involved in creating the event, the poets and publishers who submitted but didn't make it onto the shortlists. Please, please enter again next year. Everyone involved in the Environmental Poet of the Year Prize, that includes people supplying papers that we've been in touch with as well, obviously the judges and Jane Byrne and everybody that has made it what it is. Also a printer, a local printer that was working right to the last moment on that. But congratulations again. And also, yes, last but not least, to thank all of you who've been with us here in the room or watching online. So I'd now like to hand over to Jamie Andrews, who is the Director of Public Engagement here at the British Library. I'd like to emphasise again just how much the British Library do to help make these awards happen. Of course, the library is far more than tonight's venue for the awards. There are partners in a very real sense working with us as we develop each year's awards. They also care for your pamphlets, taking a very genuine interest in the entries each year. Send them a big box, and they love it. And working to ensure that all of those pamphlets are entered and archived and catalogued. So I'll hand over to you, Jamie. Jamie Andrews.
Oh, well, thank you, Lindsey. We care for your pamphlets. We care for them forever. All of the submitted pamphlets that are submitted to these prizes, they become part of our collections. They become available to future generations. And that is not the least significant thing about these awards. So look, that was a absolutely stunning evening of poetry. Poets and publishers and illustrators, and yes, Hamish Staples, have all shone tonight. We've been hosting these awards at the British Library since 2009. Lady Marks and I were literally counting on our fingers just earlier. That's 15 awards that we've hosted here. We haven't stopped for anything, not for pandemics. We haven't stopped for the last 15 years, and I suspect we will keep going forever. These are hugely important for us. This is a hugely important moment for the British Library. Look, at the risk of repetition, I'm going to thank as well everyone who has made this possible. Of course, our partners, and you can see them all there. I'd like to thank our judges as well. I'd like to thank all of the shortlisted poets, publishers and illustrators for your work and for taking the time to submit. And of course, congratulations to the winners, Guillemot Press, to Hannah, to Jane and to Courtney. Lindsey, thank you for guiding us so assuredly through this evening's event and for getting your steps in, running up and down all evening. And as always, though, I think it's right to say that our greatest thanks are to Lady Marks. Lady Marks, these awards were your idea. You have never stopped championing them. You have never stopped pushing us to keep making sure each year that these awards still matter, and we are very, very grateful. This is the end of the formal part of this evening's proceedings, but outside in the foyer, that's on the other side of that door. Please join us for some drinks and some nibbles. And while having those drinks and nibbles, do go and peruse the table with the pamphlets. All of the shortlisted pamphlets are for sale. You will all understand that the pamphlet is so designed to be able to fit into a stocking of any size at this time of year. So get Christmas gifting. Also copies of the TLS. The TLS, one of our founder partners, and this edition of the TLS does include a special review of not only the shortlisted poems you've heard tonight, but of poetry pamphlets at the moment. So this has been the 15th Michael Marks Awards. Thank you all for being here, both in person and online, and we look forward to seeing you same place, same time next year for the 16th Awards. Thank you.